Jack Holt's eyes flickered open, but it felt like a battle against the pull of deep sleep. A cold, sterile light stabbed at his senses, and the hollow beeping of machines seemed to vibrate through his bones. He blinked slowly, trying to clear the fog in his mind, but everything felt distant. Frozen. Like his body hadn't fully woken up yet. The last thing he remembered was being sealed away, tucked into cryo-sleep, suspended in time. The war had been brutal. He'd done his part, but like so many others, his body had been tossed into a coffin of ice, waiting for a world that would need him again. His breaths came in sharp, mechanical gasps, each inhalation a struggle. A sharp pressure built behind his eyes, but eventually, the haze began to lift. He realized he wasn't alone. Voices echoed faintly, distant, mechanical. A soft hum, the kind of sound machines make when they're overworked. He turned his head and saw a technician standing nearby. The man's face was lit by the glow of a terminal, his features impassive, eyes focused entirely on the data screen in front of him. He didn't seem particularly surprised to see Jack stir, as if waking soldiers from cryo-sleep was just another mundane task. "Captain Holt, welcome back." The technician's voice was flat, devoid of warmth or concern. Jack's throat was dry, cracked. He croaked, "Where am I?" "You're on the Alexandria," the technician responded, tapping commands into the console. "A military installation. The year's 2350. You've been out of commission for nearly a century." A century. Jack's mind was slow to process. He had expected time to pass, but he hadn't anticipated how much. 100 years. His voice trailed off, but he had no more questions. They would come, but right now, his brain was still trying to catch up. "Time to get you up and moving, Captain," the technician said as he adjusted the controls on the cryochamber. The freezing fog inside the pod receded, and Jack's limbs slowly regained feeling. "I don't feel ready for moving," Jack muttered, but the technician was already walking away, preparing the station for his next task. Jack took another breath. His limbs felt stiff, as though his body hadn't been used in years, because it hadn't been. He sat up slowly, the world swaying around him, his head pounding in waves. The technician gave him a glance over his shoulder, his eyes fleeting but disinterested. "You'll be fine," he said, as if it were nothing. Jack climbed out of the pod, his legs almost buckling beneath him. He steadied himself against the cold metallic surface. His fingers brushed his face, running across his stubbled skin, the first tangible proof that he was real, not a forgotten relic from the past. As his body adjusted, his eyes settled on the technician, who was watching him with an air of casual indifference. The technician handed him a set of clothes, simple, utilitarian, and nothing like the combat gear he was used to. He didn't care about that yet, not really. What mattered was what he had to do next. "Delacroix will be expecting you. We've got a briefing set up for you," the technician added, still more focused on his terminal than on Jack. "She's already on the comms." "Delacroix," Jack repeated, taking the clothes from the technician. He didn't recognize the name. But then again, 100 years was a long time to miss out on new players in the game. The technician didn't elaborate. "She'll explain everything." Jack got dressed as quickly as his still sore muscles would allow. When he finished, the technician led him through a narrow corridor. Every step he took echoed, as if he was the only human left aboard this ghost station. The walls were bare metal, cold and utilitarian. The Alexandria wasn't a place of comfort. It was a place of purpose. They arrived at a command center where the technician left him. A massive holographic display illuminated the space, flickering with data and battle plans. In front of the holograph stood a woman, mid-40s, stern, her posture sharp, commanding. She looked up at Jack as he entered, her eyes narrowing slightly as she assessed him. "Captain Holt," she greeted him. "I'm Major Serena Delacroix. You've been revived for a reason." Her tone was matter-of-fact. She didn't waste time on pleasantries. Jack glanced at the large display behind her, noting the grim red lines that divided the galaxy. "What's going on?" he asked, his voice still hoarse but sharper now. Delacroix gestured to the map, highlighting a cluster of red zones. "The Zorinthians have breached the Alexandria's perimeter. They're pushing further into human space, and we need someone like you to turn the tide." She paused for a moment, watching him closely. "You're humanity's best sniper, Captain. We need you to take down their warlord, Cryo. You've been specifically chosen for this mission because of your skills." Jack stood silently for a moment, absorbing her words. The Zorinthians, an alien race humanity had clashed with for decades, but the war had never felt quite as personal as it did now. He could feel the weight of Delacroix's expectations, but more than that, he felt the weight of his own skepticism. "How long was I out?" he asked, his voice low. 100 years, she replied simply. "The war has evolved. The stakes are higher now. Humanity's survival is on the line." Jack looked at her, his gaze steady. "And you woke me up for this?" Delacroix met his gaze without flinching. "You're more than just a soldier, Captain. We didn't wake you for your past accomplishments. We woke you because we need your edge, your abilities. You're the last thing the Zorinthians expect. They won't see you coming." Jack let out a long breath, the reality of the situation sinking in. He hadn't asked for this. He hadn't asked to be pulled from his grave. But there was no going back now. He straightened up, his posture no longer stiff with the remnants of cryo sleep. His focus sharpened. "When do I start?" Delacroix smiled faintly, but there was no warmth in it. "Now." She turned to the display. "This is where Cryo's forces are located. Your objective is to eliminate him. Quiet. Precise. You know the drill." Jack glanced at the map. He knew the drill better than anyone. It was what he was made for. But there was a coldness growing in him. A feeling that something didn't add up. He'd always been a weapon before, but now? Now, he was just a pawn in someone else's game. And he didn't know yet whether he was willing to play. "Understood," he said, his voice steady. Delacroix nodded. "Good. You'll be briefed in more detail, but the mission is urgent. We don't have time to waste." Jack gave her a curt nod and turned toward the door. His boots clanged against the metal floor, echoing into the emptiness. As he walked, his mind raced with the questions that Delacroix hadn't answered. But they would come. For now, he had a mission. And in the end, that's all he was. Just another soldier, awakened to fight and die again. Jack sat in the shuttle as it rocketed away from the Alexandria, the faint hum of its engines vibrating through his body. The cold steel walls of the transport cabin felt more confining than comforting, like a reminder of everything he'd lost in the last century. Outside, the stars burned bright, sharp pinpricks of light against the black abyss of space. He didn't look at them. There was nothing out there he wanted to see, nothing that would give him answers. His fingers tightened around the rifle case in front of him. The sniper rifle was a piece of perfection, lightweight, deadly, built for long-range strike. It had been designed with the latest technology, augmented with targeting systems and advanced optics. For Jack, it was more than just a weapon, it was an extension of himself. He had lived and died through the precision of this tool, and now it was time to see if it still worked. A voice crackled over the shuttle's comms, breaking the silence. It was Delacroix, her voice cold as usual, but with a touch of urgency that hadn't been there before. "Captain Holt, I trust you're prepared. We've identified Cryo's location. Coordinates are being sent now. You'll be dropped near his encampment. Take the shot and extract. Quick, clean, no room for mistakes." Jack's eyes scanned the map she sent, the red zone glowing menacingly on the display. The Zorinthians were entrenched deep in a rocky gorge, fortifications built with alien technology that made them nearly indestructible. Cryo wasn't just any warlord. He was a symbol, the face of the enemy. Killing him would send a clear message. But Jack knew better than to get caught up in the narrative the military wanted to sell him. It wasn't about messages. It was about survival. He exhaled slowly, his chest rising and falling in a practiced rhythm. Understood. Just keep the extraction point clear. There was a brief pause before Delacroix's voice returned, clipped and professional. Good luck, Captain. We're counting on you. Jack didn't reply. He didn't need to. As the shuttle descended toward the planet's surface, he focused on his breathing, pushing aside the noise in his mind. His body had felt like a stranger when he first woke up, but now it was becoming familiar again. The cool weight of the rifle, the tightness in his chest, the focused calm that came with preparing for a kill. It was a feeling he knew well. The shuttle landed on the outskirts of Krodhak's camp as the first light of dawn broke over the horizon. The planet was barren, a wasteland of jagged rocks and dry earth. Dust kicked up as the shuttle doors opened, and Jack stepped into the harsh, wind-blown landscape. His boots crunched against the gravel as he moved swiftly toward his designated position, a high ridge that overlooked the Zorinthian encampment. The wind howled in his ears, but Jack's mind was focused. The rifle case in his hands felt heavier with each step, the finality of the mission weighing on him. He climbed the ridge, using every rock and crevice for cover. His eyes scanned the terrain, noting the enemy's positions. Krodhak's forces had fortified their base well, with guard towers and energy shields that flickered ominously in the distance. It would be a challenge, but Jack wasn't here for challenges. He was here for the kill. Once at the top, he unlatched the rifle case and began assembling the weapon with practiced precision. Every movement was fluid, automatic. His hands didn't tremble, didn't hesitate. It was like waking up from a dream. Things were different, but some things would always remain the same. The scope slid into place with a soft click, and Jack peered through it, his heart steady, his eyes locking onto the enemy camp below. He took a deep breath, steadying his pulse. His target wasn't visible yet. He knew Krodhak would be in the center of the camp, likely surrounded by his guards. Jack's job was simple: eliminate the target and then extract. Minutes stretched into an eternity as Jack waited, watching through the scope, waiting for the right moment. His muscles ached from the tension, but he ignored it. He had been through worse. He had always gotten the shot, no matter how impossible the odds seemed. The world outside faded. There was only the crosshair, the camp, and the faint sounds of distant voices. The air seemed to thicken with anticipation. Then, finally, Krodhak appeared. The warlord stepped into view, flanked by a group of heavily armed guards. He was tall and imposing, with jagged armor that shimmered in the sunlight. His head was surrounded by a faint, shimmering energy shield, a defensive measure that Jack had been briefed on. It was meant to protect him from sniper fire, but Jack knew better than to be deterred. The shot would be difficult, but it wasn't impossible. Jack's finger hovered over the trigger. He didn't rush. He didn't need to. Time stretched, and for a brief moment, the world outside his scope seemed to disappear. There was nothing but the target, the air, and the perfect line of sight. Just as he was about to pull the trigger, a low, rumbling noise echoed in the distance. A Zorinthian warship dropped from the sky, its massive form blotting out the sun. The ship deployed a cloaking field as it descended, its energy shield pulsing with a bright blue hue. Krodhak's guards immediately reacted, raising their weapons, looking to the sky for the source of the disturbance. Krodhak himself disappeared behind the shield, his image flickering in and out of view as the cloaking technology masked his position. Jack cursed under his breath. This was a complication. He had one shot, and now the target was hidden. The warship had arrived too soon, disrupting his carefully planned strike. He didn't have the luxury of waiting for another opening. The Zorinthians began to regroup, their forces shifting in a disorganized frenzy. Jack knew the moment had passed, but his instincts kicked in. He quickly recalibrated the rifle, tracking the movement of Krodhak's guards. He adjusted for the wind and the distance, recalculating the angles in his head. There was no time to second-guess. Krothak had to die, and Jack was the one who would make it happen. With a steady exhale, Jack pulled the trigger. The shot rang out, sharp and final. The bullet tore through the air, cutting a perfect line toward its target. It hit one of Krothak's guards, taking him down instantly. The warlord ducked, and Jack readjusted, taking another shot. This time, the bullet struck a guard's arm, knocking him out of position. The chaos below was growing. The Zorinthians were scattering, searching for the source of the fire, but Jack had already moved. He quickly packed up his rifle and began to make his way toward the extraction point. He hadn't completed the mission, but he'd bought himself a second chance. As he descended from the ridge, Jack's mind raced. Something felt off. He didn't know what, but there was a nagging sense that the mission hadn't gone according to plan. The Zorinthians were prepared for him, more prepared than they should have been. And that wasn't the worst part. He had the nagging feeling that he wasn't just being used for his skills. He was being tested. Jack's boots crunched against the rocky ground as he made his way through the desolate terrain. The wind howled around him, but his thoughts were focused entirely on the mission, and the uneasy feeling gnawing at the back of his mind. The air was thick with the smell of dust and burnt ozone. Above, the Zorinthian warship still lingered in the sky, its cloaking shield now dissipated. The alien forces below were in disarray, but Krothak, his primary target, had vanished into the labyrinth of defenses. The extraction point was still miles away, and Jack needed to move quickly. The rendezvous with the extraction shuttle was set for 20 minutes, but something didn't sit right with Jack. His shot had missed Krothak, yes, but that wasn't what bothered him. It wasn't just the interference from the warship or the presence of so many Zorinthian soldiers. No, it was the fact that they had known. The Zorinthians had been waiting for him. The military hadn't just sent him here to take out a warlord, they had sent him into a setup. Delacroix, Jack muttered to himself, cursing under his breath. He hadn't trusted her from the start, but now he was sure. She had known more than she'd let on. His communicator buzzed, and he glanced at the display. The signal was scrambled, but there was no mistaking the familiar voice that crackled through the static. Captain Holt, Major Delacroix's voice came through. "We've been monitoring your progress. You've been compromised." Jack's stomach tightened. He hadn't been compromised, he had made sure of that. But Delacroix's tone was different now, more urgent than it had been during the briefing. "I know," Jack replied coldly. "The Zorinthians knew I was coming. This mission was a setup." There was a brief silence on the other end. Delacroix's voice returned, a little more controlled now. "Not exactly, Captain. It wasn't supposed to go like this, but the Zorinthians have more resources than we anticipated. They've adapted." A cold laugh bubbled up in Jack's throat. "So now you're telling me the Zorinthians adapted? Or is that just another way of saying, we don't know what we're doing? You don't understand. The warlord, Krothak, is just a distraction. We've been tracking something far bigger, and you've been used to get close to it." Jack's steps faltered. Used. That word landed like a punch to the gut. He had been a tool in a game he didn't fully understand. The realization hit him hard, but he pushed the anger aside. He couldn't afford to let his emotions show. Not now. "What are you talking about?" Jack demanded. Delacroix hesitated before answering, her voice lowering. Krothak's forces were never the real target. The real objective was to get you in position. You're part of something bigger, Holt. The Zorinthians are developing a new weapon, a weapon that could change the course of the entire war. And you were supposed to take it out. Jack's head spun. A new weapon? Why the hell didn't you tell me this before? We didn't know you'd be compromised. Her voice was thin, almost defensive. We sent you in with the expectation that you'd be able to take down Krothak and get out. But now, we need to reevaluate the mission. You need to pull back. Now. There was a finality in her tone, the kind that told Jack there was more she wasn't telling him. She wasn't worried about his safety. She wasn't worried about anything but controlling the situation. And that's when it clicked. Delacroix wasn't just playing a game, she was the game master. A cold, calculating anger rose in Jack's chest. He was no one's pawn. Not now. Not ever. "I'll do what I came here to do," Jack said, his voice clipped. "But I'm not pulling back." "Jack," she started, but he cut her off. "No. I'm not running back to you. You want me to clean up your mess, but I'm not your tool anymore. I'll finish the job, and then I'll find out exactly what you're hiding." "Jack!" Her voice was sharp, but the transmission cut off abruptly. Jack shoved the communicator back into his vest. He didn't need to hear any more of her lies. His steps were deliberate now. His pulse was steady, but his mind raced. Delacroix had used him, manipulated him, and now, he had a choice to make. He could pull back, run, and leave the military to deal with their mess. But Jack wasn't that kind of man. He wasn't someone who abandoned a mission halfway through. Not even when the mission wasn't what he'd been told. Especially not now. Jack reached the edge of the Zorinthian camp. His objective hadn't changed. He wasn't just killing a warlord anymore. He was about to expose the truth. He crouched low behind the rock formations that had once shielded him from enemy sight, then moved quietly into position. His senses were heightened. He couldn't afford to let anyone see him, not now. From his vantage point, the enemy base sprawled before him. Zorinthian soldiers patrolled the area, their alien features and technology unmistakable. Jack's sharp eyes scanned the area, looking for signs of the weapon Delacroix had mentioned. He spotted it quickly, a large, heavily guarded facility near the center of the base. A faint glow emanated from within, and a high-frequency pulse hummed in the air, vibrating against his eardrums. This was the target. The weapon. The reason Delacroix had sent him here. It wasn't about Krodhak. It never had been. Jack clicked the safety off his rifle. His focus was razor-sharp. The Zorinthians didn't know he was here, but they soon would. He aimed carefully, taking down 2 of the guards with swift, calculated shot. They fell silently, their bodies crumpling to the ground without a sound. He wasn't here to make a spectacle of it. He was here to finish what had been started, and to make Delacroix pay for her betrayal. The compound was quiet now. Jack moved toward the glowing building, blending with the shadows. Every step felt measured, deliberate. He had the element of surprise on his side. The weapon, whatever it was, had to be destroyed before it fell into the wrong hand. But as he approached the building, Jack's gut twisted. The whole thing was too clean, too quiet. The Zorinthians had let him in. They knew he was coming. They'd been waiting for him. Delacroix. The thought echoed in his mind, a vicious sting. He reached the door, the cold metal of the facility brushing against his palm. It was time to find the truth. Whatever this weapon was, it was far more dangerous than anything Jack had ever encountered. And now, he was going to tear it apart,